Adam Hassell of BBC Nottingham, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
As someone who regularly covers Notts County, I wanted to pick your brains on Sonny Aljofree. How's he doing overall so far, would you say?
Yeah, obviously signed in the summer on loan from United, and he started the first 7 or 8 games of the season, and he's been in every matchday squad in the league. He hasn't started the last 3 or 4 or so in League Two, but he started the season as the right centre half in a back three, and played pretty well, I'd say. I think that the way that Notts play, they get the ball down the floor, they play it. Played around. He gets a lot of the ball. He's got a lot to do. He tries to go forward whenever he can. And I think he did a decent job. Obviously, it helps. I think him knowing the league, having been at Accrington last season, I think that's helped him. I think this is, despite being in the same league, I think he would. I think we said it's a step up. I think not to be challenging higher up the division than Accrington, so it's probably a step up. Not should be challenging for the top three, certainly for the top seven this season, and he will, I'm sure, know that that's the target as well. But yeah, as I said, he started the first few, was pretty solid on the whole. I'd say his positioning seems to be quite good. He seems to play with a good intelligence of where to be. Not as a team were quite susceptible and still are a little bit to conceding from set pieces. I'm sure that's something that he and everybody else in that defence is aware of. But I certainly have seen enough from him so far this season to think that he's certainly got a part to play.
Touched upon there, I think the crucial point is that he's been out on loan in League Two before with Accrington Stanley. That must be invaluable because if you just coming into it cold, you're looking at a 20-year-old centre back playing in League Two. On paper, it looks like he's going to be in for a rough time, doesn't it? But that previous experience has stood him in good stead.
Yeah, I think Notts wouldn't have signed him unless he'd had that. I think with where they were. I think you see, there's the EFL Trophy, there's a National League Cup. You see these younger players from teams like Manchester United and the like playing against professional teams or maybe a couple of semi-professional in the National League Cup and getting that experience of men's football. But you very often see the first team winning that game over the 21s, and you sometimes wonder, well, how much actually have they learned from it? I actually was earlier this week at Mansfield Town against Newcastle United's under 21s, and Newcastle just sat behind the ball all game. They didn't really have the chance to offer too much with the ball. I mean, don't get me wrong, they got 2 goals and they won on penalties, so they've won the game. But you watch that and you think, well, what are you actually getting out of this? Whereas when you're playing men's football, you're in League Two. It's a physical league. It's as physical as you're going to get, really. So if you can come and learn your trade at a club like Notts County, having been at Accrington in League Two, you really sort of learn a lot more than just coming through an academy and learning how to pass the ball and how to keep the ball and stuff like that. You learn so much more about the physicality of the game that you just can't really replicate within an academy, as much as they try and do so. So I think that that's really important for him. Not had a problem. They got promoted a couple of seasons ago from the National League, and in their first season in League Two, they weren't strong enough defensively. I think they had the second worst record in the whole football league, despite that season scoring the most goals as well. So they scored a lot, but they conceded a lot. So in that summer, they then tried to fix that, which is a year ago now, and they started working towards that and getting better at it. But they're very conscious of that. So that going forwards into this summer, when someone like Aljofree's come in, that's something the club were definitely very aware of. They wanted to make sure that they kept that sort of strength at the back. He must have been someone that ticked all the boxes, and with the sort of model that Notts run, the Reitz brothers, who are the owners of Notts, are also run a football analytics company called Football Radar, very, very heavily stats based, and everyone who comes through, everyone who's recruited, has to meet the metrics that they want, and the stats are used more so, quite possibly, than any other football club use them. They have their sort of their own set of stats which they really live by. So for anyone to come into the club and sign, he must be really, really well thought of based on those facts, based on those stats that can back that up. So what Aljofree offers clearly is something that the owners and the recruitment side of the football club are really, really happy with.
That's very interesting. I like that. In terms of the physical examination that he's getting on a sort of weekly basis, does he give as good as he gets? Is he looking like he's growing into it week by week when he plays?
He certainly gives it everything. You can't ever question that. There are some big brutes of strikers in League Two, you know, some players that have really been around and have learnt their trade and know exactly what they're doing, and they're really hard to play against. It's why they're so effective. It's why a lot of teams in League Two are successful playing the way that they do. And as you know, 10 years ago, you said that much more, I think, than you would now. There's a decent number of teams in League Two and League One that do try and play football what they would say the right way. And you know, Martin Patton, the Notts County head coach, is he's very adamant all the time, saying there is no right and wrong way to play football. You've got to learn how to deal with teams that play in different ways. But Notts have been to Barrow this season, for example. That's a good example of a team that are physical. They get about the pitch. They're hard to play against. There's lots of teams like that in League Two, but I'd say that Accrington are one of them. So I think that that Sonny will have learned that from his time there. I think he didn't really need any game at the start of the season to get to speed to it. He was able to start first game of the season and keep his place for the first 6 weeks or so, and still be very much involved in the squad and coming off the bench now. And I think that you know, that what he's done so far has really helped him with that. He's got a goal in his time as well, and you know, and he really gave it some with a celebration. You could tell how much how much that meant to him when he got his goal.
Well, it was quite prolific for a centre back. He was relatively prolific with Accrington. I think he got three last season, so he is a genuine threat in the opposing box, isn't he?
Yeah, and I said earlier about set pieces, but they're really important. I mean, they're really coming back into the game, aren't we? You're seeing all the long throws in the Premier League at the moment, and that kind of coming full circle and being very much part of the game again. But if you can be a presence in corners, in free kicks, in set pieces, then no, in any league you're going to be on to a winner, but certainly in League Two, where I think there's a bit more importance put on that. And the goal that he got as well, it was sort of a second phase from a corner. He was the first to react. He was quicker than the strikers. He was quicker than the defenders to get a touch on the ball and put it into the net. And as I said, he was absolutely delighted with that. He ran off celebrating. He couldn't remember what his celebration was after the game. I remember speaking to him for the radio, and he couldn't even remember what he did. He just knew that he sort of had his outburst of emotion. But you know, it also helps. You know, he seems really grounded. He seems a really nice person to have around the place. He's always got a smile on his face, and I think that always helps as well when you're coming into a new environment. Very easy to get on with is the impression that I got from the couple of times that I've spoken to him. I think a lot of the players in the squad think the same thing of him as well.
Awesome. And then I suppose finally, Adam, you touched upon that he's been out of the team a little bit more recently. Why would you say that is? Who's he up against?
Yeah, well, not to play three centre halves, and they have had a couple of injuries in that position as well. Matthew Platt, who was a starter all last season, out slightly more longer term. Aljofree was keeping Lewis Bakari out of the team at the start of this season, and Bakari's just started to work his way back into it and has played really, really well when he's come in. It's nothing against Sonny that Lewis Bakari's come in and deserved to keep the shirt, you would say, and that's not because of Sonny Aljofree performances, it's because of how good Lewis Bakari's been when he's come in and taken his chance. But with him playing three centre halves and having a couple out, there's always going to be that rotation. They've still got an EFL Trophy game to play against Manchester United's under 21s at the beginning of November. They've got an FA Cup campaign, which hopefully they'll go quite far in as well. So that squad rotation is going to be really, really important, I'm sure. But I'm sure that he equally will really seize the chance when he gets it. He's seen that whenever I mentioned Lewis Bakari, there's been others that have come in and have really taken that chance when they've got it. It certainly seems to be the kind of club under Martin Patterson where if you come in and prove yourself, you absolutely will play, and that doesn't mean that you can then rest for a week. It means that if you do well this week, you start, and then you start the whole cycle again. And equally, I think that he would have seen who's come through at Notts in recent years on loans and know how important this could be. I think as soon as he gets that chance, he'll be aware of that even more. Last season, George Abbott came from Spurs on loan and you know, ended up winning awards by the end of the season. Was nominated for Player of the Year, a Young Player of the Year in the end. He's now at Wycombe in League One, and I'm sure will have an impact at some point at Spurs with how well he played. I'm sure he'll play in the Premier League. You go back to when Notts were in the non-league, the likes of Anthony Patterson, who's now in the Premier League with Sunderland. You can go back as far as Ryan Yates, which is only 7 or 8 years ago, who came on loan from Forest. He's now the club captain of a team in the Premier League, and you know, you've only got to go back to 2013 to see Notts having Callum McGregor on loan from Celtic and Jack Grealish on loan from Aston Villa, who obviously have gone on to have the unbelievably successful careers that they've had. These are all players that had loans at Notts County. Notts is a really good club, I think, to nurture talent, to give them game time, to put them in the right place, and they've got a good history of it. So I think anybody that comes in will see that and relish any opportunity that they can get.
Brilliant. That sounds very promising. Adam, thanks so much for your time. Lovely to have you on. And yeah, take it easy.
And you, thank you very much.